COVID is such a challenging time, and the communities are facing many complex challenges. The very first thing we did was just reach out to all our communities and go, who's open? Who's not open? Who's at risk because they don't have protection for their staff? And so in the early stages of the pandemic, a lot of it was just reaching out, talking to everybody and going, how can we help and how can we direct either funding and or other resources to those agencies so they could be responsive and reopen and serve the most vulnerable in the communities. And obviously we've got growing homeless populations in most of our island communities. And so one of the key things we wanted to do was to keep COVID out of the homeless population, because we knew that would be a super spreader. That would make for problems for everybody, and we wanted to keep that vulnerable population safe. Just since March, we've been funding 126 organizations and 164 programs through our region. We know food security is an issue. We've had some of the food banks closed down. We had to step in and figure out how to get donors' dollars to get food delivered in some of these more remote communities. Many people have been laid off, and so what we're seeing is families actually facing food insecurity for the first time. The mental health issue, vulnerable seniors, the teens, and young adults is certainly a big area that we're seeing a great need for mental health supports. We know we're seeing from point-in-time counts that United Way does in March, we're seeing an increase of absolute homelessness. What I'd like our donors to really understand is we're trying to move upstream to prevent people from being homeless. So if we can do rent supports, if we can help people prior to them becoming absolute homeless and having to go into shelters, that's key. Our real concern right now is we've been responsive both with the federal dollars and with our donor dollars this fall, but if we don't run a strong campaign this fall, many of those programs aren't going to be available next year.
The Cowichan Valley, food security is a major issue. When COVID first happened, we saw a lot of the food distribution sites close, and that left people without food. So we were able to really work with a network of food distribution service providers from across our entire region and implement funding for one organization that was really able to look at the pockets of community that needed food and implement food services for these community members. There was a senior citizen who had had day surgery and couldn't get home from the hospital. So she called the local Women's Resource Center, who we worked with through another program that we operate, Reaching Home. The services called us and we said, how can we help? What are you looking for? And so she said, we're looking to just use a little bit of our funding that United Way has given us to support this woman to come home. And so we were able to say, please help her to get home, and absolutely we will use this as an allowable expense. And so they were able to not only get her a taxi cab ride home, but to make sure she was home, safe, she had food in her fridge, medication that she needed to come home with after her surgery. And I just keep thinking, if we weren't there that day and the Women's Resource Center wasn't there that day, we wouldn't have been able to get her home.
The need is huge in our communities through next year. We're turning to our donors again this fall, saying, if you can, please give. It's going to be needed more than ever.